Oh, what day is it? I've lost track. This pandemic makes me feel like I'm on a deserted island. At least I'm not alone, though. Got my buddy Wilson here with me. What's that, Wilson? We should talk about the directing final? You're so right, buddy.
Howdy, my name is Woody. These are my friends. We got together and watched the Da Vinci Code. These are the top 10 rules all directors must follow. Brought to you by
the Brady Bunch.
Rule number 1. Don't be afraid to try new things and go for a new picture if things don't quite work out how you thought. I personally wasn't involved in the making of the Da Vinci Code, but because how complicated the plot is and how creative and intriguing some of the shots were, I can tell you that it probably wasn't all filmed in a day. So don't be afraid to try new things. Sometimes you might end up with something you didn't expect.
Don't be afraid to try things differently. Sometimes you gotta bunt. Sometimes you gotta knock it out of the park. Sometimes you gotta pinch hitter. You never know what you're gonna need, so don't be afraid to look at things differently. Try new perspectives. See what's gonna happen. Maybe it'll surprise you.
Being willing to try new things is super important. Think about it this way. If Andy were to play with myself or Mr. Tractor here the same way every single day, it would be so boring. The same goes for directing. If Ron Howard would have directed all of his films the same, we would have pretty much been watching the exact same film over and over and over again. You have to be willing to try things differently to keep it interesting.
Ron Howard does something we have not seen in previous films. The past 3 were all historical fiction that use real footage in them. The Da Vinci Code is a fictional tale that incorporates history through the use of flashbacks and layered imaging on modern-day settings. This is a new attempt for Howard, and for the most part it pays off. The key here is that Howard took a chance with this style of storytelling. Directing is all about taking risks. I shouldn't have got on that plane. That plane was a risk, I tell you.
Rule number 2. Cooperation and collaboration are necessary for any good performance to come about. The way I see this playing out in the Da Vinci Code is Tom Hanks is in yet another one of Ron Howard's films. Clearly, this guy knows how to build relationships and to use the people around them to the best of their and his ability. It's important that you listen to those around you, but it's also important that you follow your gut. Ron Howard says it this way: hear everyone around you, but listen to yourself, because in the end, you're the one making the decisions.
Number 3. Make use of soundscape. The sound that comes from the stage, often accompanying a scene, adds nuance, such as music and silence. Hans Zimmer wrote the score for the film, which earned him a nomination for a Grammy, a Golden Globe, and an Oscar. The film rides the line of genre. It's a thriller, a treasure hunt, a heroic journey, as well as a thought-provoking drama. Zimmer was able to capture the thrilling element involved in the story with the use of modern symphony orchestra with high-paced tempos and short bursts of quick, melodic phrases by violins. This is most evident in the car chase sequences that the characters are thrown into. He is also incorporated using a choir to embody the historical aspect of the story. The choir sounds mysterious, with long, chant-like lines that reflect the music of the past, which is referenced heavily in the film. Beyond both of these concepts, though, is the overarching theme of wonder and mystery that ought to be found in a treasure hunt. The heroes are on a quest for the Holy Grail, the most famous ancient religious artifact in the world. Zimmer's ultimate showcase of this is played out in a scene in which Robert must solve the codex using Isaac Newton's tomb. As Robert ponders the answer, the music picks up heavily and invites the audience to think as Robert does. I've had a lot of time to think on this island. Maybe too much. Another clever use of sound is no sound at all. When the characters enter enormous cathedrals, the music is absent and silence is put in place. This technique shows a reverence for the religious environments that are used in the film. I know a thing or two about silence.
Rule number 4. Read the script multiple times and be able to tell a story forwards and backwards. You gotta be able to find those 5 to 6 mini stories within the overall story in order to tell it to its truest and fullest potential. In the Da Vinci Code, the overall story that the audience gets to see is Robert and Sophie on the quest to find the Holy Grail. A few of the mini stories, though, that we get to see is Robert and Sophie's relationship progress as a friendship, and also Silas's journey as he carries out the task that he has been given by the teacher.
The number 5 rule: develop your actors first. It's important to always think of your team members before the film or the stage. Think about baseball. If you develop your characters, if you develop the character of your players and your team members first, they're going to be able to do anything. You have to be able to create an environment where the actors are able to experiment and try new things, to feel comfortable, to feel confident. The same thing goes with baseball. With team members, you got to know each other. You got to know what's going to happen next. You got to know who's going to be there for who. You got to be able to trust each other. And you got to be able to feel confident in the position that you're playing. Same thing goes with actors. Same thing goes with the director. You got to develop the people that you're working for and working with. Those people got to feel confident in what you're doing, the way that you're leading them. They got to know what's going on. They got to know how you feel about them. They got to know that they can trust you, that you care for them, that you're going to help them succeed and not make them fail and fall on their face. It's all about developing them. Once you develop them, everything will come into place. All the plays will be executed with precision and accuracy and perfection. The same thing with acting. Once you develop your actors, the film or the play will develop itself. You see this with Ron Howard. Man, that guy can coach. He knows what's up. He develops his people first. You see it in all of his films. You see that the way that he develops his people, his films develop themselves. They fall so perfectly into place because he focuses on people first. He focuses on their strengths and their weaknesses, and he develops those weaknesses.
Rule number 6. Understand the different learning styles of your team members. You have to be able to figure out whether or not a team member needs more or less micromanaging and adjust as you see fit. You also have to be able to speak their language. Both of these are super important to make a project successful, such as the Da Vinci Code. Ron Howard was able to not only understand the learning style of each of his team members, but also speak their language.
Number 7, know the names of your members. Communication is key when it comes to baseball. If you don't know the names, if you don't know who you're throwing to, who you're pitching to, who's catching for you, if you don't know these things, you're all gonna flop. Know the names of the people that you're working around. Once you do this, it's gonna create an environment that is so crucial to good outcomes. Know the names of your team members, from the littlest person. Know the name of your bat boy. Know the name of your water boy. Know the name of the coaches on the other team. Know everyone's name so you can create an environment that is joyful, an environment that works out for everyone to feel good and confident and feel like they can make the play. Man, community is so important when it comes to this. When it comes to film and stage acting, if you know the names of people, they're going to feel valued by you. They're going to feel like you care about them. They're going to feel like you're going to lead them to success, that you're going to lead them to victory. So know the names of your people. It'd be foolish not to. Ron Howard, you can tell he knows the name of everyone inside and out in his films because they show it in their acting. They show it in the way that they choreograph their movements with their cameras. Make people feel important. It's so important. Don't just make them feel important, but help them know that they are important.
Number 8. Utilize the directing techniques such as making the familiar strange in visual pauses, i.e. the silent 7 from directing for the stage. Speaking of silence, directing techniques like the silent 7 from directing for the stage. It's the only book I have with me. I've used most of the pages to feed a fire so far. along with making the familiar strange and visual pauses are incorporated into the film, such as silent tension. Robert has a few scenes that show the audience's claustrophobia, which incorporates the visual pause. As Robert is freaking out because of his claustrophobia, Sophie touches his face in order to calm him down, a technique she learned from her mother. The scene goes quiet as Robert slowly calms down, holding eye contact with Sophie, making the familiar strange. Sophie enters the Templar Church and remembers attending services there, but the church has not had regular attendees for a number of years. She has had a vision of her parents and is stunned. Status swapping. In a shocking twist, Professor Lee reveals himself as the teacher, as Robert and Sophie discover Isaac Newton's tomb. Lee's status is then placed above the others as he was the mastermind for the meeting, where previously the audience had assumed him to be a mere creepy crippled professor involved with the Pyre of Sion. A silent journey. Robert tries to solve the codex. He is silent, but the music behind him is swelling and moves the scene along. Eventually, Robert breaks the silence after a few moments, telling Lee he is unable to solve it.
Rule number 9. Always be on the lookout for things that can be visually appealing. Things that incorporate the elements of design, such as line, shape, and color. The Da Vinci Code is a visually appealing film that incorporates many of these elements. The color palette is rather dull, but sometimes it's offset by a beautiful red color in the bishops' and priests' robes. As far as line and shape, there are several really cool symbols that are used throughout the film that provide really interesting lines and shapes to look at. Always be on the lookout for something visually appealing. There are a ton of shots in the film that are rather unique in the way that they are filmed and the speed of the camera moving and the angles that they work with. So be on the lookout for those when you watch the Da Vinci Code.
And rule number 10, just remember that everyone's human. We all got a little bit of human in us. We all got a little bit of failure in us. Sometimes people aren't going to make it to first base on time. That's all right. You push forward, you move on. But don't forget, there's a little bit of humanity in everything. So don't try to make things perfect. Don't try to expect things from people that can't be expected. Remember, everyone's got their own issues. Everyone's got their weaknesses. Everyone's got their strengths. Know it. Use it.
Find the humanity in every part of the process of the project. The humanity can be found in the characters, the actors, and the crew members. Howard finds the humanity of his characters and their journeys to the story's advantage. Robert goes from being a cynical intellectual to a man of faith and a keeper of ancient secrets. Sophie realizes her importance and moves from a mere side character to probably the most important character of the story. Even the antagonist, Silas, has a journey of his own, constantly trying to serve and please Opus Dei and God by carrying out God's justice, while harming himself in the process. Howard does a great job of humanizing these characters that could have been easily cheesy and caricatures of themselves.
Finding the humanity is probably the most important rule of all. You have to remember that everyone's human and everyone's going to make mistakes. But everything is also a learning opportunity, so take advantage of that. You have to also be able to find the humanity within the characters as well. The audience wants the characters to be real and to be able to relate to the characters. So find those moments where you can make the characters just that.
The humanity can be found more than just in the actors and the crew members themselves. It can also be found in the script. Finding the humanity is an important part of any project because it'll remind you exactly why you're doing what you're doing. Finding the humanity in the Da Vinci Code is rather easy, since it's a story about Jesus and his supposed bloodline, and anyone who knows the story of Jesus knows that it's the best story of humanity ever told. So, when you're watching the Da Vinci Code, be careful so the humanity doesn't hit you in the face. Bonus rule number 11. A director must always have a signature article of clothing. It has to be super cool and unique. Like a beard.
Like your favorite baseball uniform. Every director I know has one.
Or a cowboy hat.
Or a Wilson? Wilson? Wilson! Wilson! No! Wilson, I'm sorry! Wilson! Wilson!
And always remember, there's no crying in baseball.
Gotta keep the sun out of your eyes, Wilson.